Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Healing Brain. This is our weekly webinar and podcast here at Doman International, where we discuss weekly topics that are important for children with special needs. And parents join from around the world and ask us their biggest and most pressing questions. I'm being joined by Colleen Hudson. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm currently in Italy right now, so a few hours ahead, and hopefully our internet holds up for this session. So today we're going to be discussing a special topic, which is, can the Doman Method help a child who is nonverbal? Or I prefer the term pre-verbal, meaning that they haven't started speaking yet, but they will in the future. We'll be talking about what are the factors that hold back a child with special needs from speaking. And this would apply for children who cannot say any words, but also for children with limited speech. And so hopefully everyone leaves today with having learned something new and gaining something from the session. Before we jump into the topic, just want to make a few quick announcements. So Doman International has some trips coming up. So in May, we have appointments scheduled in Bangalore and New Delhi, India. In June, we have appointments scheduled in Australia, Melbourne. In July, we have appointments scheduled here at our European Center in Pisa, Italy. In August, in New Zealand. In September, in Serbia and Croatia. Colleen, what are we looking at in terms of availability in Philadelphia in our headquarters?
So we have spaces open for May and for June. I encourage people to get, I feel that sometimes parents wait until closer to the appointment date, which I understand from a planning perspective might make it easier. But for us, the optimal amount of time is really 4 to 6 weeks, because then we can help you to prepare in advance. Now, that doesn't mean that, if it's 2 or 3 weeks away and you're looking at your schedule saying we could really make this happen, of course, we can also make it happen a lot of times. But as the summer goes on, things do start to fill up. And so I just encourage everybody, if you're thinking about coming for an appointment with us, please get in touch sooner rather than later, so that we can start planning and have plenty of time.
Perfect. And while you're watching, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you can type your questions into the comments box and we will answer them in order. Okay, so let's jump into the topic at hand, which is, can the Doman Method help a nonverbal child? I'm going to just show a quick presentation, which hopefully everyone will be able to see. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Colleen, can you see the slide that says Foundations of Speech Development?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And do you see now it says speech involves vision?
Yes, it looks like there's some sort of little shadowy box in front of it. I can't quite tell. Oh, there, it's gone now. Never mind. Maybe you were hovering. Yes, speech involves vision.
Okay. So let's just talk a bit about the foundations of speech development and why it is that so many children with special needs have challenges with speech. So as I've discussed in previous sessions, the brain uses 8 to 12 different regions at the same time to coordinate speech. And if any one of those 8 to 12 areas do not have normal development, that could affect speech. And most of the children we see at Doman International have actually multiple of those areas are not fully developed. And so that is why they don't speak, or they have limited or poor speech. Let's quickly talk about why speech is so often affected. And it's because it involves so many different, a diverse set of neurological abilities. So the first is vision. a lot of people don't realize the importance of vision with speech development. Children who have, who are developing normally an average child intuitively knows to watch the mouths of adults when they're speaking, right? So parents will often find that their children, their neurotypical kids, will watch their mouths as they talk, and the children learn how to articulate based on the mouth movements of adults, right? And to a certain degree, we all do this, even if we don't realize it, if we do it subconsciously, right? If you're in a very loud place, like imagine you're in a loud nightclub and there's a lot of noise, the first thing you're going to start doing is watch a person's mouth moving to try to understand them better, right? So especially if our hearing is impacted, we will watch, the mouth movements. Or if you're trying to understand someone speaking in a second language, we will often watch the mouth movements very carefully. So many children with neurodevelopmental issues do not do this intuitively, and that really gets in the way of their speech development. And so often when we start to improve a child's vision with the program, and parents start to see better eye contact and better visual focus, parents will also start to notice the child starts watching the mouths of adults and starts speaking better. The second thing, which I think is more obvious, is that speech involves hearing, right? If a child's hearing ability is distorted or impaired in any way, it's going to affect speech. Most people at some point in their lives have met someone who is deaf and will notice that their articulation is not perfect. Now, children with special needs can be hyposensitive to sounds, meaning they don't hear sounds well enough, or some children are hypersensitive, where they're overly sensitive to sounds. Both of these children can be impacted in their speech development because their ability to hear sounds is distorted. And so when people are speaking, they don't hear the sounds articulated in a normal way. That can definitely affect speech development. So this is why we do a lot of auditory treatments in the Doman method to help improve auditory processing and hearing. Third, speech involves tactility, right? To move your mouth and tongue properly, you have to be able to feel your mouth and tongue properly, right? Tactility is the ability to feel. So if you cannot feel your mouth and tongue properly, how are you supposed to move and coordinate it properly? So that's why we do different kinds of oral integration to improve a child's sensitivity of their tongue and their mouth. Speech requires understanding, right? You have to be able to understand words in order to have any need to speak them. Now, I would say this is probably the most misunderstood part of speech development, in the sense that this is often the area that most professionals go to first. They go, oh, this child doesn't speak because they don't understand. And very often the understanding challenges are greatly over exaggerated, right? They're exaggerated. The professionals will say, oh, this child doesn't understand, so they don't speak. It's not usually that simple. But that being said, we do find that when we use the Doman Method cognitive programs, like the reading program, for example, where we're presenting a child with single words in the reading program, which is definitely a cognitive program, which grows understanding, we very often see improvements in speech development, right? More input of language results in more output of language. And so there's no question there is an understanding speech connection. And for some children, they really need that cognitive development to get them speaking more. Next, speech requires coordination. It's not by chance that a neurotypical child usually starts saying their first words around 1 year of age. Well, also at that same time, they're developing the pincer grasp, right? The ability to use their thumb and forefinger for fine motor skills. And that's because speech is a fine motor skill, right? For you to have the ability to coordinate your tongue movements, your mouth movements, your lip movements, that's a fine motor skill. And so we have to improve fine motor ability to improve speech development. Speech requires organization, right? It requires the ability to organize language. Very often when children come onto our program, parents will start saying, not only does their child start speaking in longer and longer sentences, but that their child starts organizing their speech better. They start to use better grammar, better sentence structure, right? Because even when my grandfather created the program, the Doman Method, he really referred to it as a program of neurological organization. We're trying to organize the brain. And we very often see improved speech organization with the program. And then last but not least, speech requires breathing control. We have to be able to regulate our breath in order to talk. This is something which is not very well understood and is almost never addressed with children with special needs when they arrive at our clinic. So, for example, if you hear as I'm talking right now, between each sentence, I will inhale, right? And then as I speak, I'm gradually letting the air out of my lungs, right? And of course, you and I do this completely unconsciously, right? Our brain over time becomes better and better at knowing how to regulate breath. If you watch an average 2 or 3 year olds speaking, they'll very often run out of breath. They'll go, Mom, and they have a hard time getting all their language out because they're excited and they're not able to regulate their breath very well. But as they become older, they become very good at regulating breath. And by the way, if you're at all skeptical that breathing control has anything to do with speech, I recommend, run a few hundred meters, sprint a few hundred meters, and then try talking. It's very, very difficult, right? It's uncomfortable. And so for many children, they have a tough time getting sounds out because of breath, right? Even to get out a sound, like imagine trying to get someone's attention by making the sound, something like that. Even to make that sound like, oh, or ah, you need to have diaphragmatic control. You have to be able to, control your diaphragm, your chest, your trunk, right? And many children don't have that kind of control. And so it's hard for them to get sounds out. And so we have found that when we improve respiration, breathing, we help a child get out sounds and speech better. And so we do that through a combination of oxygenation programs and mobility programs that help develop breathing. Right. So when we look here at some of the Doman Method programs that we use to help develop speech, as you can imagine, I just listed, I think maybe 7 or 8 different things that we have to do with a child to help their speech. And so when it comes to speech development, very often just bringing a child to speech therapy, for example, where the therapist who might be very well-intentioned, they might try to get the child to focus on their mouth and try to get them to replicate sounds. Some kids might be able to do that, many cannot. So very often parents will not find that they get good results with speech therapy. And that's because it's one approach when a child really needs various approaches. And so virtually every part of the Doman Method program in one way or another is a speech program. It may not look like a speech program from an outsider looking in. For example, the Doman Method oxygenation programs like the breathing enhancement program, which is focused on developing deep breathing in a child. Many people would look at that and say, okay, I get it. You're expanding lung capacity, you're improving breathing ability. I understand that's could be important, but they don't realize that that is so connected with speech, which it is. Of course, things like Doman Method reading program and the other cognitive programs, very much connected with speech development. The different mobility programs that we do with children are active respiratory programs. So for example, I just came out of a meeting here at our clinic in Italy, and for children, we were giving them active physical activities like aerobic running, which is running when we keep the child in a specific heart rate zone, which is ideal for brain oxygenation. And when we do that, we improve oxygenation to the brain, we improve respiratory development. We also help develop the highest level of the brain called the cortex, which is very important for speech development. So physical programs, a lot of parents don't realize the critical importance of doing physical activity with getting speech development. Now, you heard me mention the connection between seeing, hearing, and feeling when it comes to speech development. And so most children on the Doman method are given visual programs, auditory programs, and tactile programs. It's, again, very overlooked when it comes to children with special needs because speech is an output ability, right? The brain sends signals to the mouth and tongue to produce speech. But getting a child whose brain isn't working properly for them to do more output is very difficult. But giving them input through doing visual stimulation, tactile stimulation, auditory stimulation, that's quite easy because it's passive for the child. The child doesn't have to do anything, right? If we're doing different music, auditory stimulation programs, for example, right? Even in a mobile child who can't talk, we can put headphones on them and put on specific kinds of auditory treatments that help develop their auditory processing ability, right? Different visual programs can be presented to them to improve their visual processing and memory, improve their eye contact, and improve their ability to watch the mouth. Tactile integration, well, this really relates to the next point, which is oral integration, which is using specific tools like a Z-Vibe brush, right, which is a brush that can be found online to help stimulate the lips, the tongue, the inside of the mouth, so the child can actually feel their mouths better. That allows them to, organize their mouth movements better. So that's what we're really looking at in terms of the Doman method. And it's really why a holistic approach is needed, because if you look at a specific child, even with our experience, you can never be totally sure which of these programs is going to have the biggest result for a specific child. We know, just based on experience, each of these programs will help the child, but which one of these is going to get the best speech development improvements, that depends on the child, right? We can go on clinical experience, what we suspect will help. We'll say, okay, this child is immobile, right? This child doesn't walk. And based on our experience, we know these children have massive breathing issues because they don't run and walk and run like other children. They tend to be very shallow breathers. So we're going to do some really good respiratory programs to improve that, right? Or we'll say, this child, they keep their mouth open all day. They obviously don't feel their mouth very well. We're going to do a lot of oral integration, right? Or we might say, this child doesn't seem to follow well. Like they don't locate sounds in their environment very much. So we're going to do a lot of auditory integration with this child. So it really depends on the child. But all of that being said, children will sometimes surprise us and respond better to a certain program that we weren't expecting. And it's just one of these things that you don't know until you do it. And so what we do is we take this approach of, okay, let's do everything that we know works and let's get this child speaking as quickly as possible. We don't want to be too patient when it comes to speech development, right? And wait years and years and years. We want to try all the things that we know from the past can work and get whatever works, right? And once we have some clinical experience with the child and we see they're responding to, let's say, auditory integration and oral integration, we'll say, okay, let's do more of those things. Let's spend more time. But first, we've got to try most of these things with the child to see how they react. Okay. I wanted to show one of the simple activities that we love to do with children, especially as they're starting to develop speech from the program. Colleen, can you see a picture in front of you with a child with a board on the ground?
Yes, we can see that.
Perfect, yeah. So this is a girl named Nicole, and Nicole had a rare genetic diagnosis called Phelan-McDermott syndrome. And when Nicole began on our program, she had, no speech. And here you can see a board in front of her and there's a circle in the middle of the board and you see words right in the middle of the circle. And then you see some words on the outside of the circle. So this is called the language board, right? This is something that any parent could start today with a child. The language board is a visual representation of the child's speech, okay? So if we take Nicole's board, you can see that there are certain words are on the outside of the board. Those are words that Nicole said maybe once or twice. So for example, you can see words like bag or fish, which are on the outside. So Nicole said those words once, and when she did, her parents said, "You just said the word bag, Nicole. Let's go over to your board. We'll write that word down, put it up on your board." And so they make it into a ceremony, right? It's a way of acknowledging something the child just said. And the reason why it's so important for a child, there are really two important reasons to have a language board. The first is that children tend to be better visual learners than auditory learners. So when they say a word, if you write it down, you say, "You said bag, let's put it up on your language board," they get to see visually what's happened, right? It's kind of like why every person, we all like to be told we've done a good job, but we like even more to be given a certificate, because we know when we can see something visual, it's something tangible, it's something meaningful. And so children, when they see it visually, it becomes more meaningful to them. Now, there's another part of this, which is we want to change the child's attitude and mindset toward their own speech development. Many children who have neurodevelopmental delays have a they're very self-conscious about their speech, and they almost become pessimistic, if that makes sense. They start to realize, oh, my speech doesn't sound like everyone else, and even when I try to talk, no one seems to really understand me or respond to me, and so why even talk, right? They develop this it's kind of sad to think about it, but they think, you know what, I'm trying to talk and it doesn't sound good. Why do I even do this? And the best way for us to fight that is to give them a positive view of their own speech. And the way we do that is with the language board, right? We say, "You just said the word bag, Nicole, that's amazing. Let's put it up on your language board. Great job," right? And so that gives Nicole feedback. Oh, okay. When I said the word, not only did they understand me, they were proud of me. So proud they put it up on the wall. That's a really big deal, right? That's why, imagine a little child, they draw a picture for mom and dad, and mom or dad go, "Wow, look at your painting. Let's put it up on the fridge." The little child becomes very proud, right? Oh, because they know mom and dad only put things up on the wall if it's important, right? Kids know that intuitively. Things only get put up if they're important. And so for children like Nicole, when the words get put up on the language board and the parent brings them over and says, "Look, we just put a new word up. Great job." That makes a big difference. And they start to realize, oh, I guess I'm good at speaking because everyone around here seems to like it. And so they start speaking more and more and more, right? Because they love that positive feedback that they're getting. Now, one of the cool features of the language board, you can see the circle in the middle. That's called the consistent circle, right? So let's say Nicole says the word bag for the first time. You put it up on the edge of the board. You say, "Great job, Nicole. You said bag. The word is going up on your board." Let's say Nicole a week later says the word bag again. You say, "Nicole, you said the word bag again. Let's go back to the board and we're going to move your word a little closer to the consistent circle. Good job," right? So you're reinforcing that she said that word again and you're proud of her. Then maybe after 4 or 5 times, that word makes it into the consistent circle. And you say, "Look, Nicole, the word bag is now in your consistent circle. Great job. You've worked so hard," right? And so now she's used that word enough that it's becoming a part of her regular vocabulary. Once it makes it into the consistent circle, you don't have to keep bringing the child back to the language board, right? Because at that point, it's a consistent word. And you're going to want to focus on those other inconsistent words that have been added more recently to the language board. But it's a great way to make a child proud of their speech. Many parents have told me that when a guest comes over their house, the child takes the guest's hand and brings them over to the language board to say, like, look at what I've achieved, and the person, if they're smart and they catch on, they go, wow, look at what you've done, right? Because they realize that the child has worked hard for that, and they really, really have. So the language board is a very good way to bring a child's attention and change their mindset toward speech development. And it is something that I would virtually recommend to every family. One thing I do want to say, a word does not need to be pronounced perfectly to be put up on the language board. One of the most common mistakes that's made with children with neurodevelopmental delays is they will try to speak, but because they have articulation issues, because their brain development hasn't been normal so far, the adult will correct their speech. So, child tries to say, let's say, dad, right? But maybe they go, instead of saying dad, they say, dada or something like that. And the parent will go, no, dad, right? They correct the child. And so the child, now instead of being excited about speaking, they're self-conscious, right? Now we've turned their attention not toward, I said a word, we've turned their attention toward, I made a mistake. And what happens with those children over time is they tend to speak less and less and less because they already know their speech doesn't sound good, but now they're being corrected, and no one likes to be corrected. And so much better to be like, wow, you said dad, great job. And you go and you put the word up. What I always say to parents, when your child doesn't pronounce a word correctly, you just acknowledge what the child said. And when you're acknowledging it, you say the word in the correct way. So you would just say something like, dad, you said dad, great job, right? You don't say you made a mistake. You just say, oh, you said dad, good job. So that way you're reinforcing the child said a word. You're saying it the correct way, but you're doing it as part of a positive reinforcement rather than a correction. Because a lot of parents don't realize that children know when the words come out, it doesn't sound correct. Like the child knows, oh, that doesn't sound right when I say it. The problem is they don't know how to say it. They're unable to say it correctly because they're not able to yet have the fine motor control of their tongue and mouth. So now with the program, that will come over time, but what you need to focus on as the parent is praising them for their speech and giving them a positive mindset. As they become more and more confident in their speech, they will talk more and more. Some of you, those of you who have been around for a long time, know this story, but I like to tell it as an example. So, I traveled to Italy. I'm here at our European Center right now. And I've been coming to Italy since I was a child. So I am lucky enough that I learned to speak Italian. And what I've noticed is that when new people come to Italy and they try to speak Italian, Italians will essentially lie to the new people into thinking they're better in Italian than they actually are. Right. So the new person will come to Italy and they're like, I'm going to try out a little bit of Italian. And they'll go to someone, they'll say like, ciao, because that's the only Italian word they know. And the Italian will go, oh, you said ciao, like, wow, look at you. I didn't know you spoke Italian. You're amazing, right? And the person starts to get more confident, right? And they go, oh, I guess I'm pretty good at learning languages. And the next day they'll try out something new. They'll say, buongiorno. And they'll say it with the most terrible accent ever. And the Italian will go, oh my gosh, you speak with an amazing Roman accent. Like they will just completely lie to the person. And and the people over time, they're just like, I'm so good. Like you'll hear them boasting, I've heard, oh, I'm so good at Italian. Everyone's telling me that. Meanwhile, I speak Italian. I know it's terrible. But the Italians know, if I lie to this person, they will speak Italian more. And you know what? The Italians are right. They have exactly the right mindset around speaking. And that's how we should treat children as they're developing their language. We should be like, wow, you are amazing, right? Because then they will speak more. I always contrast this with, and listen, I love France. It's one of the most beautiful, amazing countries I've ever been to. I love French food and culture, but the French like to correct people when they speak French, right? And so I'll never forget, I landed in Paris and I decided I'm going to try to speak French. And so I walked up to an information desk, okay? Information desk in an airport. I walked up to the lady and I tried to say, good morning in French. Bonjour. I said, bonjour. And she looked at me and the first thing she did was she corrected me. She was like, no. And she corrected me. And when she did that, I thought in my head, I'm never going to try to speak French again, right? That was how I reacted. No, I'm not saying that that's an immature response, right? I should have been more mature. I was an adult. But my first reaction was, okay, I'm just not going to try anymore, right? And that's how children with special needs feel when people correct their speech, right? And so the fact that many children go into speech therapy and the first thing they start doing is correcting them, worst thing you could do. And many children just shut down and they say, oh, you're going to correct me? I guess I just won't talk. So very, very important to use the language board, use praising, and that child will talk more and more. One final thing, and then we'll open this up to questions. What I found with children on our program, and this is with thousands of children, over the last 20 years in my own personal experience. The Doman Method has been around for 70, but I've been doing this work for 20. I have found that when it comes to speech development, quantity almost always comes before quality. Quantity of speech comes before quality. So the more a child talks, the better the quality of their speech becomes. But unfortunately, so much of the speech therapy model is the opposite. We're going to work on quality first with the hope that it brings quantity. In my experience, that I don't want to say it never works. On rare occasion it does. But most of the time, if you focus on quality first, it brings a self-conscious mindset to the child, and they talk less and less. And they're fearful of speaking. But when we can use the programs to get them talking more and more, saying more words, speaking in more sentences, saying more sentences back to back, all of a sudden you start to see the speech articulation improve. If you think about an 18-month-old child. An 18-month-old child only says about 10 words, okay? Average child. And by 3 years of age, they say about 2,000 words. So they go from 10 words to 2,000 between the age of 18 months and 3 years, right? Incredible. Think about the quality of speech difference between an 18-month-old and a 3-year-old, right? 18-month-old, they might say things to someone else besides their parent, and the other adults won't understand what they're saying. They have to look at a parent. But by the age of 3, that 3-year-old can usually speak in sentences and other people will understand. That's because the child's quantity of speech greatly improves. And as they speak more and more and more, the quality starts to come along. So when it comes to speech, quantity comes before quality. And unfortunately, as I said, so much of the therapy model is focused on quality. And that's why many nonverbal children, unfortunately, don't learn to speak. Okay, well, so those are, some of the things that we do to help a nonverbal child learn to speak. We can now go to questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, go ahead and type your questions in. Colleen, do we have any pre-submitted questions?
Yes, I have one.
Okay, great.
This is from Jamie. Jamie has a daughter with a diagnosis of HIE and is wondering about ways to optimize her development. I don't know how old she is.
Okay, and so Jamie's just interested in optimizing her development in general. Is that right? It doesn't say specific areas.
It does not, no.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jamie, yeah, if you were here, Jamie, and probably the best thing for you to do is just tell Colleen about what are the specific areas you're looking at optimizing. But whatever the area is, if it has to do with development, which I'm sure it does, we can help, right? And that's actually why with the Doman Method, we work both with children with special needs and developmental delays. And also even the program is done with neurotypical children, because many of the same activities that help enhance brain development for children who might have neurodevelopmental issues can also help children who are neurotypical in their development. And so, yeah, whether it's speech development, Jamie, or mobility development, or social development, or cognitive development, certainly the program can help. If you were able to watch what I discussed earlier, you can see all the different areas of development and how they all intertwine, with vision and hearing and speech and mobility and breathing, right? And so, because our program takes a holistic approach toward development, absolutely, we can help virtually anything. So I think it would be great if, Jamie, you told Colleen what are those areas of development you're looking for, and we can get into more specifics. But absolutely, optimizing development is what we do. Anything you want to add to that, Colleen?
Just that for anybody who might be watching, if their child has a diagnosis of HIE, that is something that we have seen many, many, many times. So I feel that that's something that could, any diagnosis can be very scary for families. But, it's often nice to hear, oh, we've got experience with that, extensive experience. So you're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen over 40,000 families over the last 70 years. So there's virtually nothing at this point that we haven't seen. Colleen, we have a comment on Instagram from Raf Toms, who says, I tried many times to make contact with your school, no success. So I've put up here the contact information for Colleen, and, please, use that email address, use the phone number that I've put up there. You could write Colleen via WhatsApp. And sometimes we have parents join this, and it turns out they're, writing another organization thinking they're writing us, something like that. We've had that a few times.
That happens.
Yeah.
So please, when you message me or email me, let me know that you are the parent from Instagram who was trying to get in touch. Okay. So that I can go back and check and see if there was any miscommunication, but I'm pretty good about answering my messages. So I'm concerned that maybe you were reaching out to someone else. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you. We're here for parents.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So again, whether you're joining right now, I think we're down on Facebook, unfortunately, but we are on Facebook, on Instagram and YouTube, and here on StreamYard. But yeah, go ahead and type your questions into the comments box. We've got some time now, about 15 minutes or so, and we can answer them. And I do recommend you get your questions in early, because sometimes everyone types in questions in the last 5 minutes, and I feel badly when we can't get to all of them. Okay. I think we're up on Facebook now. Thank you, Les. Thank you for coming to the rescue.
Fabulous.
I'm very lucky. I have some people in the background who can jump in and fix these kind of technical things. All right. Yeah. And if you're joining on Facebook right now, you can type your questions into the comments box, and we'll get to them. Colleen, any questions that you've been getting recently from your calls on parents that you think might be worth us talking about?
It's a very good question. I actually had a parent ask me recently whether the Doman Method really could be applicable for them, considering that they work full time and their child is in school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the short answer is yes. Just to give everyone an idea, we just completed our staff meeting here at our European Center in Italy. And so we evaluated a bunch of families today, and we just sat down and developed the child's new program. And I would say about half of the children are in school currently. So, now some of the children were in school 2 hours a day, some 4, some 6, so it depends on the child and their specific needs. But the answer is absolutely. I mean, one of the families, for example, that we had in today, the child has been having unbelievable cognitive gains in reading. The child started writing for the first time this period at the age of 10. He started writing. And in speech development, his ability to hold conversations and speak in sentences is much better. And he's in school 6 hours a day because both parents work. And so parents are able to do a few hours of the program in the afternoons when the child comes home, and then a bit more on the weekends. So, and by the way, every child that we saw was having great results. There was another girl who is in school 14 hours a week. So what is that? Maybe about 3 hours a day. And she is, I believe, 16 years old. And she's been on the program for a year. She could not read before she started the program. And now she reads at a 3rd grade level. So in 1 year, at the age of 16, unable to read to reading at a 3rd grade level. And by the way, I mean, I don't think if the child went from unable to read to reading at a 3rd grade level, I don't think it's unrealistic to say she'll get to a 5th or 6th grade level in the next year based on the speed of that improvement with a child that the school system had basically quit on, and I don't say that with judgment, like they didn't care. They tried hard and had failed. Absolutely. That girl on our developmental profile, the 16-year-old, was growing 2 times faster neurologically when we did our assessment than an average child in the last year. So she's making up for lost time and closing the gap, and that's while going to school. So that's my long way of saying it's absolutely fine. And actually, it's more and more common with the Doman method. And we'll work with your family.
Fabulous. Yeah, I knew that it would be good for families to hear that from the horse's mouth, and that we have a lot of experience with that. But I think it's so key to really get exactly what your kid needs organized, so then you can optimize the time that you do have to work with them, instead of all the time running around to different therapies that aren't making any big difference,
Yeah, exactly right.
I feel almost like parents are, and I think the parents who find us feel this, they're kind of being kept busy with very little forward momentum, but it's sucking all of their time to the point where they think, how can I add something else? But the answer is no, what we're going to add is going to make everything actually work. So you're not, you're sort of trading a thing that isn't working for something that will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a really great day. We happened to have a lot of children between the ages of 10 and 16 today, just by chance. Every week is a little different in our clinic. Sometimes we have very young children, sometimes older children. But one of the girls who's 16, we're graduating to life. Young girl, not young, a girl named Charlotte, who, she and her younger sister are both on the program, and she's just had, exceptional progress. And it's just gotten to the point where her parents are like, we think she's ready to go to school with her peers, start, getting ready to complete high school, get a job and all of that. So, it's always a little bit of a bittersweet moment when we graduate a kid, because it's amazing on the one hand, but we're also, a little sad that we don't get to see them as much, but it's a very important moment in the family's life.
Yes, absolutely. Moving toward independence.
Yeah. Well, everyone, we've got a few more minutes. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the comments box. As I said, sometimes we get all the questions when there's like 2 minutes left and we can't get to all of them. While we're waiting for the next question, I would like to announce what our topic next week is going to be. So as everyone knows, this this webinar and podcast is at the same time every week. And so next week, which is April 27th, we're going to discuss, is my child too old to do the Doman method? So I kind of talked about that briefly now, but we felt that would be a good conversation. Maybe another way of phrasing that is when's the ideal time to start? But yeah, we can talk about age and the Doman method and the different challenges that we see with both young children and with older children. You know, sometimes parents think, oh, it's only positive if you start young and only negative if you start older. That's not actually always the case. So we can discuss the positives and challenges that come with both situations.
Do you know the old school that your parents ran? Do you know who was the oldest student when they started?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't know, but I'm pretty confident that they had students at least in their 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know, Colleen? Do you remember?
I don't know. I don't know. No.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I know at least in their 30s. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's an interesting topic. You're just making me think. I actually was I was out at a convenience store earlier today at Wawa, and I saw I saw a group of young adults, clearly with neurological challenges, with a carer. They were I think being taken out for snacks, and I thought, and I don't know what the situation was, whether they go to a daily situation or whether they all live together. But I thought, even hearing the way that the carer was speaking with them reminded me of hearing about with the School for Human Development, this sort of experimental school, the whole idea of speaking to these young adults as adults and not speaking to them like they were little babies, and really just bringing even the communication level up a notch. I think our parents are they get that immediately with their young kids, but I think if you're starting with someone older, it can be a challenge thinking, oh, right, you're not a little kid. Just because you can't do all of the things an adult can do, I still need to speak to you in a respectful way.
Yeah.
And that's going to help you. It's going to bring you up a level that you won't feel like you're.
Yeah. And I think, Colleen, when we speak next week, please remind me to talk about the School for Human Development, because I think there's a lot to learn there about what was achieved with adults with special needs. But along with what Colleen was saying, when my grandfather, Glenn Doman, started this school, one of the early things he noticed was that here you had young adults arriving who most of them had been born with some kind of neurodevelopmental condition. So they were, they had mobility challenges, cognitive challenges, social challenges, speech challenges, right? And many of them were kind of walking into a school. Some of them maybe for the first time, but others had failed in school, hated school. One of the first rules he made was that the teachers in the school, who were the staff who worked for my grandfather, my parents, Douglas and Rosalind, both worked in this school. One of the rules was that they referred to the students by Mr. and Mrs., right? So most of these children, they were now adults. They were 30 years old, and people would still call them Billy, or Mikey. Even though they were 30 years old, they still had their kind of like child nicknames that had stuck with them. And that represented the attitudes of the other adults around them, right? Who kind of treated them in an infantile way. And my grandfather said, no, he's not Mikey anymore. He's Mr. Jones, right? Or it's, Miss Walsh or Miss Cameron, right? And that's how they referred to them. Mr. and Mrs., like or Mr. and Miss, we're going to treat them in the way that we want them to think of themselves. And for a lot of them, it was life-changing because they had just never been spoken to like that before. And it changed the way they viewed themselves. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely pivotal. Yeah. So we can talk about that more next week.
That'll be
Oh,
fun.
Lucy is saying, working with my son, his speech is so much better. That's great. Lucy, could you say, like, what are the things that you've done that have been helpful for speech? I'd love to know. All right, let's see. Well, yeah, Les is asking a really good question here that probably is the kind of thing I'd have to think about, which is, what's the most successful case you've ever witnessed? I mean, the one, it's interesting. I get asked versions of this question, and each time I have a different answer because it's probably whatever, child I've seen the most recently or is in my mind. But one of the stories that personally touched me the most was a couple who lives in Portugal, and they contacted us because they knew another family on the program. And so the mother, Maria, got my phone number and she called me up with her husband. And they said to me, Maria was pregnant, and she said, we've done a ultrasound and amniocentesis, and we've been told that our child is going to have a rare congenital condition. We've been told to terminate the pregnancy, but we don't want to do that. We want to have this child. And we've heard that you can help with development. So here they were calling me out of the blue about a child that hadn't even been born yet. And so they, we sent them access to our online videos, which prepare them for the appointment. They watched the videos. And when their child was born, they came for an appointment, probably when their child was 2 months old, something like that. And by 2 years of age, we graduated the girl from the program. A little girl named Vera, who's also responsible for many other Portuguese families coming and joining the program because, her story has been so touching to many other families in their country that they've come to Doman International. And Vera, Vera is a child that if I put her in a room with 10 other girls her age, and I said to you, all right, pick out which child parents were told, they should terminate the pregnancy, but she'll never live a normal life. Which one do you think it is? I'd bet $1 million you couldn't guess who it was, because Vera looks like all the other children. She acts like all the other children. She talks like the other kids. She's a neurotypical child. I think that has a lot to do with parents starting. Now, parents did the Doman Method consistently day in and day out. They got started very young as well. So everything went right that could go right. But it all started with them. And so I think that story really sticks with me because, I saw what their love and dedication could achieve. Any stories that jump out at you, Colleen?
I don't know who the family was, but you've told a story a couple of times of a family who found out about the program when their son was very little, did a program with him to the point where he was walking, talking, and they were never certain of the source of his challenges. But when he was a little bit older, the doctor said, oh, why don't we get some genetic testing? Because we never did that, and it's so much more sensitive now. And that the geneticist called them up and said, I'm really sorry, but your child has this genetic condition, and the prognosis is not great. You're going to have, of course, he'll be developmentally delayed and all this. And the parents said, oh, we wish you could have met him because, he's in school right now, but he runs, he talks, all of the normal, like he would have come in and told you himself that he's doing great. Yeah. And I don't know which family that is, but I love that story because I think that's okay. Yeah. I think that is really a great example of chasing the diagnosis generally doesn't give you any answers anyway. So for families, when parents start to realize something is not quite right, as soon as you do, we can start working on it then. And if later on you find out, oh wow, we had this genetic condition, then your kid can be the outlier.
Yeah.
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 But that it's not a sentence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Lucy had said that she was working with her son and his speech is so much better. So I asked, okay, what have you been doing? So she's been doing different parts of the Doman Method program. So creeping, crawling, swimming, and recently started track and field. Amazing.
Cool.
And also we've done a reading program. We've done some of the oxygenation program and some patterning. Amazing.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what I said at the very beginning, right? When a child's speech improves, like your son, it might be hard if I said, okay, which of those things help the most? It might be hard for you to say, I don't know, is it crawling and creeping? Is it, the running with the track and field? Is it the reading? Is it the oxygenation? It's hard to say. But, very often parents will say, I don't care what's been the most important thing. My kid's gotten better. That's all that matters. And that's exactly right. All right. Well, listen, I think we are all out of time. I will throw Colleen's contact information up on the screen one more time. Her email address, info@domaninternational.org, and her phone number. Feel free to contact her. We'll be back next week to discuss, when is a child too old to start the Doman Method, or is a child too old to start the program? So that should be a good one. But also, if you would like to pre-submit questions, you can. Colleen, do you know how, if parents want to pre-submit, is there a link that we can?
There is actually. Yeah, there's a link that I can put in the chat. But also,
if you have it accessible, that would be great. If not, they could also email it to you as well.
It's exactly, that's very easy to do. You can always email it directly to me. But I'm going to put the link in oh man, that's a long link. I'm going to put it in anyway, but
it's okay. Yeah. If you put it in, then at least if someone's on Facebook or YouTube, they can click on the link and pre-submit a question. Yeah, perfect. All right. Great, everyone. Well, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Colleen. Bye-bye.